welcome to Professor and Priestess. I want to allow Mama Regina to please do us the honors. And may I have permission to speak from my elder?
Absolutely.
Sure, good thing. So, without, well, first, welcome. If you're catching the playback, if you're here with us live, please feel free to engage with us in the chat and we will absolutely acknowledge your comments and questions if you are here with us live. If you're catching the playback, then please feel free to leave any comments. And this is our first episode of our podcast series, Professor and Priestess. I am the priestess. Mama Regina is the professor. And we are going to be doing a season to start us off that is going to be all about how revolution is the only solution. But without further ado, I would love for you, Mama Regina or Dr. Regina, to please introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay. Well, I always start off with this. I'm an original member of the Black Panther Party. That is one of the achievements that makes me so proud of myself as I journey with all of you on this earth. I am a member of the original Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, walked and still walks with Bobby Seale, and walked with Huey Newton, Kathleen Cleaver, Eldridge Cleaver, Apprentice Bunchy Carter. I'm throwing out these names. If they're new to you, look up these people. And I just might be talking about, in particular, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, because he was so unique and he inspired me so much. And he did a Malcolm X when he was in jail. So by the time he got out of jail, he was ready to be the leader of the Los Angeles branch of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. So I knew brothers and sisters of great courage. And because I'm an elder now, I can look back and just remember what I felt when I first saw such brothers. And it was the brothers that I first saw. It wasn't brothers and sisters, although there were sisters already in the party. Okay? But I saw Huey Newton and Bobby Seale when I was about 16, maybe going on 17 years old. Once I saw those brothers, Philadelphia, where I was born and raised, could not hold me anymore. I was like, I'm going to California because I'm going to be with Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. So I made up my mind, and that was that. And I honestly didn't know that I was making history. I just knew that the low-life, dirty, despicable pigs who beat up Black people, I saw this. I saw this on the block where I was a child. So I never liked the police. And since these brothers were standing up against the police, I thought, well, this is good. This is how we should do things. And then fast forward many years later, with the confidence that those brothers gave me and sisters, I went back to school because I had really been a dropout. I should never have been graduated, but the teachers didn't care about me or any of the other Black kids that they were teaching. And so I left California and I went back to Philadelphia, and I was so bold. When I think about myself back then, Sister Neff, I'm stunned at what I did. I had decided that I was going to be a poet. I had never been to school, but I had read all of Apprentice Bunchy Carter's poetry. He was our poet in residence in the Black Panther Party. And so I decided I'm going to be a poet. And since I'm going to be a poet, I'm going to be a writer, I should give a writing workshop. I hadn't published a thing. Okay? But I decided, look, I am a leader of Black people. See, I got all of that, from my Panther brothers and sisters. So I want to be a writer. Certainly, there probably in Philadelphia other people who want to be a writer, and they'll come to my workshop. And lo and behold, there was this sister. I don't think she'll mind me calling her name, Giselle Hudson. She was already a student at Temple University. So after the workshop was over, I think I was fabulous. I don't know. But after the workshop was over, little sister Giselle, because she's real small, so I always call her little. She said, "Oh, my goodness, what school did you go to?" And I was like, "School? What do you mean?" She said, "Well, are you at Temple?" I said, "No." I said, I can't go to the university. I'm not smart enough." She said, "Yes, you are." I said, "You can't be serious." She said, "Yes, I'm in Temple, and you sound smarter than a lot of people I know. So why don't you come with me?" And this young woman took me inside of Temple University for the first time. And at that time, it was a program called PASAP, Pan African Studies Community Education Program, where Black teachers in Temple would voluntarily teach to the community. So I went to like a free course with Sonia Sanchez and other lesser known professors. And it was all because of this sister coming up to me saying that I was university material. So, and then the rest, of course, is history.
Well, so Mama Regina is an author. She's a PhD, and she is also obviously, your original Panther, as you expressed. You're a mother, right? I
Yes.
think that you're a living legend, and I think that a lot of people really need to know the power of us connecting with and hearing the voices of our elders, especially those who were a part of and continue to be in that legacy of Black liberation, because there has been a lot of success in muting that voice, that militant voice for Black liberation. So I think that that's very, very important for everyone to be able to know who you are and connect to your story. So today we're going to be expanding a bit more into your experience as a Black Panther, but also who you are now and how that foundation of being a Black Panther at the core is continuing that legacy even today. So, and I guess I should also introduce myself. So, for those who don't know who I am Aust NeferKa, and I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at. Tehuti Ma'at is an umbrella institution. It is a revolutionary instrument that focuses on creating revolutionary institutions in the areas of healing, art, and education. So we primarily are rooted in our community service work. We have many different programs that we do, all in alignment with continuing and reaching the success of the African World Revolution, which is the healing, liberation, restoration, elevation, and expansion of the African world. And honestly, it really is something that restores us to our humanity, to our cosmic perspective that our ancestors had, seeing ourselves beyond our humanity, even, right? So I think that the center of my work as a spiritual warrior and as a high priestess, as a sacred wisdom keeper, specifically of ancient African wisdom, particularly that of the Happy Valley in Kemet. And for those who are live with us, happy full moon. This is literally a happy full moon. Happy is the ancient African origins of what we more commonly know through the Greek or Roman interpretations, right? The European interpretations of the constellations and the zodiacs, and that would be equivalent to Aquarius. So this full moon that we're in tonight is actually in Hapi, which is the name of the river that most of us know as the Nile. So when we say the Happy Valley ancestors, we're talking about all of our African ancestors that were rooted in that land of that stretch of the Haki River and how that river, literally that inundation of the Haki of the Nile, right, the flooding of the Nile brought the abundance that allowed our people to begin to cultivate land and farm in order to give us all of the foundations that we have for civilization today. So I think that that is a very, very rich legacy. It also is part of my other identity that I want to express today, which is I'm a farmer. I'm literally just coming in off of a day of sowing the land. It's been a lot of work, but I'm very thankful. Our rain season just began here, so it's just go time. So I'm glad that we were still able to connect and make this happen. I think we had a lot of lofty goals and different things we wanted to do. So we had some technical difficulties. But as we progress into our series, we're going to be able to share more, especially with those who are able to watch the live stream of the podcast. We want to share some visuals. We have some, Mama Regina has some great photos and her books. So all of the different things that we talk about, I think would be great to have that visual component. So we will have that. But yes, I'm a farmer as well. I'm also a singer, songwriter, healing artist ultimately. So in addition, I'm also play guitar. And this is all part of I'm a poet, writer. We're all multifaceted. Interestingly enough, Mama Regina and I are both Tehuti, which is Gemini. So if you can't tell, we love to talk. But beyond that, Geminis are very dynamic. So we do a lot. And yeah, but I think it's great for people to get a sense and a taste of who and what we are. I think because specifically when it comes to the militant identity of being a freedom fighter and being a revolutionary, a lot of people don't be expecting you know the the priestess to be militant, right? Or even sometimes the professor is caricaturized in a way that is not militant. So that's an interesting thing that I actually would love to speak about with you. Because the Black Panther Party was really like the epitome of militant, like a militant expression of our struggle. Prior to that, obviously we had Malcolm X, and we had a lot of different ancestors, may they rise in power, who were expressing this more militant stance. But I think that when people think of militant Black freedom fighters, they see the beret, they see the leather jackets, they see the guns, right? So it's also become like a identifier, right? For people, they think immediately, that aesthetic. So I was hoping that you could start by telling us, how it all got started. I mean, I know you have your particular journey in terms of how you started becoming a Panther, which you touched on a little bit, but in 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 the scope and the context of like America, or as I like to call it, divided states, and the circumstances and situation that was surrounding this birth, right, of this political movement that was really continuing what was done before, right? Because a lot of people know about the civil rights movement, but they might not be as familiar with the progression into the Black Power movement. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Do you hear me clearly? Because when I'm listening to you, it kind of goes in and out, and I don't know if I'm sound going in and out. So,
Okay.
and I heard your question, and I'm going to speak to it, but I just wanted to make sure that you can hear me clearly.
Okay. You
Okay, I'm
sound
going to. I have a fan on, and maybe that's an interference. I'm going to turn that off.
okay. Well, you do sound clear to me. Can someone please just send me a comment
All
and let me
right.
know if the
We'll
audio sounds
see.
fine?
Say something else, Neff.
Okay.
I just want to hear
Yes.
the. I won't want to hear you.
And whoever is here live to just send us a comment and let me know if the audio sounds fine or if it's cutting up on their end as well. The other thing is I'm dealing with that African Wi-Fi. I'm telling you, I don't know if there's other parts of Africa that have a solid Wi-Fi, but from what I know, it seems
Oh,
the
that's
continent.
right. Yeah, we're okay. But I got your question, and it's a very important one. People need to understand this. First of all, we are and have been at war. As Malcolm X once said, we're surrounded by enemies. It was an enemy that went over to Africa to bring us into this country, you see. And very often today's, especially today's youth, forget that we're at war. They really think that they're American. They really think that they've made it. They play right into the white American aesthetic, which is definitely detrimental to us. You know, I'm gonna get back to my particular life in the struggle and all like that. But I want to tell you this. I love working with young Black people. I mean, that's what I do. And I have friends who are like that as well. And this particular husband and wife team that I won't mention their name anyway, they are such good Black people. They have their own children, but they take in other children. I mean, they literally put non-biological children of theirs through college with their, and these people aren't far from well off. I'm not talking about the wealthy, far from it. Okay. In fact, I've lent them money, but these people are always dealing with young people. So when I wanted to build my website, I wanted to work with somebody, you know, young. Um, and I called them up and I said, look, I really need help building a workshop, a website. I don't know what I'm doing. So of course they had a young person that they could send to me, right? And you know, she was showing me how to build my website. Now this is the deal. Girlfriend, smart as could be. I mean, she was just, oh, when you see my website, I mean, she built a lot of it. Okay. Now this is what I want to get to though about her, which explains even a portion of contemporary youth. Very smart, educated, young sister. She got her first job with a major white company. I'm not even gonna say its name because you know it, right? Well, she was the only Black. Now that's what she didn't count on. That's what she didn't count on. Now, what they did to her first, they promised her a particular salary. Okay. And this young sister left the city, you know, that she had been living in, you know, with her mother, went to this other state, you know, so she's all alone, you know. hmm She's the only Black. The salary that they offered when she got there was less than what they had said before. Okay. Even more than that, she experienced, I won't go into all of the details, but she experienced her first time being in a real racist situation and experiencing racism for the first time. You know, she had a breakdown. She had a total and complete breakdown. So me and her are talking, right? And I'm like, what's going on with you? Because I recognize craziness because I'm half crazy some of the time. So I said, what has happened with you? And she broke down. She told me the story. You know, it was terrible. This is true. But she couldn't recover. I mean, over time, I told her, I said, look, take your time. I gave her some steps to do, you know. She had her own steps that she was going to take to come back to healing. Girlfriend never came back to healing. Now, why do I give? Now, she will, but I'm just giving you this example. In the 1960s and 70s, in the 1940s and 50s, in the 1930s, in 1919, when brothers and sisters were being strung up across this country, and you would walk out of your Black door every day, and you might see somebody strung up, and just because some people acted like the devils that they are, You can't move. You ain't got no kids. You ain't on drugs. Okay? You ain't been pushed off of a streetcar. You don't have to look at signs that say no niggas and dogs or colored and white. You have to sit in the back of the goddamn bus. Excuse me. I don't want to curse on this. I really don't. But I just wanted to point out seriously
Yeah,
what
this is
we have endured.
express yourself freely.
What we have endured. Okay? And people, my people today, these younger and boys, oh, I had a terrible child. Who didn't have a terrible childhood? You think Harriet Tubman's childhood was good? You think being enslaved for life was fun? We really don't have problems like our ancestors have had. We really don't. Now, I'm not saying we don't have problems because we do. But one of the things that I really want people to understand is keep it within the scale of life of your people, our people on this earth. Okay? What in the world do you think it felt like when a mother, black mother, gave birth to a baby and that baby was taken away from her? And she would never see that baby again. Or let us say that she did keep her child and her child turned 6, right? But the master's wife wanted a piano. So let's sell Delsey's little pickaninny to get a piano. By the way, every story I tell you tonight is true. I can even tell you the book to go to where you could read it. This is from Iola Leroy by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Now, her mother, the little girl's mother, I'll call her Betty. Betty went to the mistress. Mistress, please, please. You know me and my baby. You know, we helped raise you and your baby. Please don't sell my little girl. Please. Oh, I want a piano. She sold that little girl and bought a piano. And the little girl's mother, every time she heard the piano being played daily, it tore her heart apart. And she never saw her baby girl again. And as you all know, or you should know, pedophilia is rampant today. Do you really think pedophilia didn't exist back then? But hey, black people were put on sale. So who cared? So what might have happened to that darling little 6-year-old with no mother, no father, just a white racist pig master and mistress, supposedly taking care of her? So because I know a little bit about Black history, and in particular our enslavement period, nah, Bloods, we used to call each other Bloods back in the Panthers, we don't have serious problems. Okay? We do not. And what we need to be doing is educating our children and any young people that we come in contact with. For you sisters who don't have children, for you brothers who don't, go out and get some. Get some. Get a black child or two. Now, this is only if you're sane. If you know you're crazy, do not mess with the children. But if you know that you're a good brother or sister, right? And you're in the point of your life where you might not have any children, okay? Go get a black child and deal with, help that black. Go find that mommy that got 5 or 6, or find her, because you know she's out there. She's in every neighborhood. Find her.
Okay.
Take some of her children, 1 or 2. I mean, you don't have to start big, but educate black children, because this is what Huey and Bobby did for me. See, I left home at 14. and nobody came after me. That's my story. That's real. Now, at the time,
On what you were speaking on earlier, because I just want us to, I want to reel it in so that we're getting the context, because people need to actually be able to frame what you're saying, because honestly,
okay,
the reality of personalizing and thinking about the different narratives and experiences that people actually experience during enslavement, post enslavement, even to now, I think
yes,
a lot of people are desensitized to that. And I think that the reality is we're not really connecting with those one-on-one stories. We've really internalized the narratives that, you know, which people say pull yourself up by the bootstraps narrative, which to an extent, there's a reality where we have to operate outside of a victim paradigm.
true,
Yes, absolutely. But what happens when that narrative is not balanced with the other side? Because the reality is there is a system that's imposed on us. There is a reality to why we're here right now, right? We don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in a continuum. Literally, we're in a
exactly.
continuum. So everything that we experience is the result of what has happened before. So when we're talking about anything about liberation, and it's hard for a lot of people to process that because of the benefits, because of the comforts, and because of a degree of entitlement that a lot of people have because they didn't go through those experiences and they're genuinely disconnected from what that experience is.
Well,
So with
that's where I would say that they're
yeah,
acting like Americans. They're acting like Americans. That individualistic concept. America is built on the foundation of there was a Davy Crockett, the great pioneers. And all. Listen, if you black, then you need to be connected to Black Power. One
so
of the
how
things that the
how were
'60s
people
did,
identifying at the start, at the onset of the Panthers, right? Like, because even what you were just talking about, like
yes.
you were 14 when you got introduced to the Panther Party,
Oh no, I
but
wasn't 14. I wasn't
oh,
14. I left home at 14.
okay. So how old were you when the Panthers started to become?
I went out to Oakland when I was 16, 17 years old.
Okay. So, well, my question is for you, like in surrounding this particular aspect of just like being young, even what you were just saying, like how we need to educate ourselves, and the reality
Right.
of the identity piece is something that requires a lot of education, honestly. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who aren't aware of, you know, the politics, the economics, and the cultural dynamics that lead one to have this particular perspective. So how what was happening during that space? Like were people already identifying as black? Were people identifying with America to that degree? I think because the
Yeah, we
atrocities
were. You see your
polarized,
hair? You
people
see your
didn't.
hair, sweetheart? You see your hair? That didn't exist there. You see this? That didn't exist. 98.9% of black people, Malcolm X was conking his hair, a process. I thought black men who had that slick hair, they were the cutest. Okay. Our hair to many black people in the 60s was terrible. I mean, it was woolly, it was ugly, it wasn't, we wanted hair like white people. That was our mentality. Now, what happened in the 60s, all praise due, was a Malcolm X, was an Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who said, who, Malcolm anyway, said, who taught you how to hate the color of your skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? And what Malcolm did, Malcolm was just indefatigable. I mean, he went all over America spreading this message of race love. Then we had music. James Brown came out with, now we already loved James. I mean, Mr. Please, 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 we loved him. Anyway, he comes out with a song, Say It Loud. I am black and I'm proud. I said, Lord Jesus, have mercy. I mean, to be at a young party, because, you always had, you know, parties you can go to,
Um,
and dance.
I think you're cutting out
I'm
a
cutting
little.
out.
Yeah, we lost you for a second. Like you're
Oh, that's awful.
honestly,
Okay,
I'm not
can
in that
I don't, I don't, I don't know.
the going.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, anyway, between the music, speeches by Malcolm X, the activism of Martin Luther King. Now, some people, today might say, well, King turned the other. Listen, that was activism. It was more than anybody else was doing. I even marched with King just once because I could not be You're not gonna call me names and spit on me, and I don't slap you. That's not my nature. So, but all of us appreciated what King was doing because he was doing something. He was doing something against the
Well,
tyranny.
I have to give Dr. King a lot of credit because what a lot of people don't recognize is like each person was or each movement was expressing the courage of the moment. And I feel like
That's
in that
right.
movement, it took a lot of courage to confront it directly.
It did.
And because of that, we got the exposure that we have of how bad and how brutal and how inhumane and how savage these people were.
Yes. That's
And
right.
we had that. We wouldn't have had that to really to wake a lot of people up to get us to the next level. And I think a lot of people get lost in that part, right? Because before we had a Malcolm, we had Marcus Garvey. We had a lot of different people who were able to root us essentially, right? Because this here might not have been there then, but I like when Dr. Clark says the whole enslavement and everything that we've been experiencing right now, right? This valley is one half the wink of an eye when you think of the scope of
Yes. Yes.
millennia that African people have been traversing the earth, right? And when you think about the fact that we are the cradle of civilization, we are the cradle of humanity, right? So our natural state, our beauty was the baseline, right? Now, because of colonialism, because of imperialism, and all of the different ways that we've been successfully domesticated, I think that now we have to put that within that context because that's what got us there. So let's make sure like people, because I think that that's also an issue that a lot of people, especially young people, have is putting things into context, not just in the moment, but in historical context, because you can always zoom out. And I think we have to zoom out and see ourselves at the origin point because we've been sold this linear idea of evolution. And that has literally programmed people into thinking that we were the lowest form and that everything evolves in this linear progression and it's constantly rising. So everything that proceeds is higher, is better. And that degree of hierarchy and that literally that Eurocentric paradigm is what has us to this day mentally and spiritually enslaved. So that's why I think that revolution is key and really the only solution because can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's key and it's the only solution because it gives us a paradigm for our growth and our existence that is not evolution, that is not linear. It's cyclical because literally we revolve around Ra, we revolve around the sun. And that is a cycle of nature that we have to emulate and model. Everything on our planet is alive due to that system,
That's true. That's
that
right.
solar system, right? That order, that cosmic order. So I think that that's really essential because a lot of people are not thinking how we're moving through cycles of time,
Right.
right? So they're getting embedded in the moment. And because I'm good, I got my car, I'm making money, like the American dream, as people call it, then people are disconnecting themselves from the progression of all the people who fought and bled and died, those who are even still in prison, still locked up in cages, for us to have the benefits that we have right now. We would not have that. So it's really ungrateful And it's really sad, honestly, when we think about the state of mind that most people are in today because of the benefits that we have. Now, that was just me going off on a bit of a tangent, but it does bring us back to the expression of revolution and
Mhm.
identity, because yes, that's one of the things I remember. One of the things that drew me to the Panthers and made me proud of when I started growing back my afro, even though everybody else was like, you need to perm your hair, and I looked in the mirror and I thought I was ugly.
Right. That's true.
Right? Dealing with that reality, so the self-love and connecting our identity, bringing us inward for that healing. So that has been
Mhm.
a pattern that we've had throughout the movement that have happened, because we have had to see that. We have to see that beauty. If you don't see that beauty, if you don't love yourself, then what are you going to fight for? Nothing, right? There's nothing worth fighting for. So we had to see that. And I remember seeing the videos of the ladies with the afros and the little clips where they would talk about like about the afro, and it just made you proud and want the afro because it meant something. And it meant something different than what it meant prior to imperialism and colonialism and the enslavement, the Ma'afa, because we had already gone through all that. So it was almost a sign of resilience. It took additional meaning to what it had prior. Because when you think about the ancient world and the fact we wore our afros freely, we wore our hair freely, we did our wigs, we did our braids, we had our locks, it wasn't a thing. But now it became an act of resistance because it quite literally was that, because
That's
we
right.
were forced to assimilate, we were forced to conform. So now you had to resist, you had to break through that barrier to get to the point where we are here now, where we can actually wear these things. And I mean, to a degree, there's still a lot of discrimination and a lot of issues surrounding the hair and all of that, a lot of exploitation on top of that now. But nonetheless, you get to do it. And it's a completely different experience. You can walk down the street and see a lot more people with natural hair now. And I do think that the Panthers and the work with the Black Power movement had a lot to do with that, because it
It did.
started pride.
It absolutely did. And do you know what the afro was originally called? A
What?
freedom. Are you gonna get your freedom? Yeah, I'm gonna get my freedom. Well, how are you gonna
I
get your freedom?
said,
Well, let me see. I want y'all to come up, and this actually happened with me. I had the sisters come over to my apartment in Oakland, and we got Tide detergent, we got bleach, and they put that all in my hair because you had to get the straightening stuff out of it. And I remember closing my eyes so that the bleach and the Tide wouldn't get in my eyes, so I could
oh,
get
wow.
my freedom. So that hairdo, the afro, it was called the afro too, but it was also called the freedom, and that just tells you how much um, of what was going on in society was being changed at that time, changed for the benefit of us as a people, because we had the Negro people, and that's what we were. When I grew up, we were not black. Black? You called somebody black? That meant a fight out in the street. You black?
Wow.
What? Black, black, black. You, somebody got beat up. I mean, we went to blows over the word, over being called black.
Happening now
See,
with African. Like,
and dig, and a lot of that comes from Malcolm X. Let me hold up my book, one of my books. So I even wrote this book, Malcolm X and the Poetics of Hakeem Adabuti, because Malcolm X became the poet's muse. Malcolm X and his image influenced the artists of his time period. And so we had a whole new literary tradition in this country. Oh, Abiodun, the last part, they come out of the mouth of Malcolm X. Malcolm X would give speeches in New York City, in Harlem, and he'd have Alatunji on drums. He'd have sisters coming out there in their little African attire, before he went to the mic. So I mean, Malcolm was key to the public intellectuals at that time, and even just common people really taking a look at themselves and saying, what am I doing? Why am I straightening my hair? Okay, oh, bleaching skin. I mean, skin like in Marcus Garvey's time, okay? Skin lighteners were just everywhere. Okay? I mean, that's how partly how Madam C.J. Walker made her fortune. And I'm not hating on her either. I mean, she looked at, okay, what do my people like? What will they buy? What do they need? She made the straightening comb and she had skin lighteners too. Because sisters and some brothers, let me throw that in, they did not like the color of their skin. So they wanted to be light. Now, everybody knows the answer to this question. Who were they imitating? Who were they trying? Michael Jackson, talk to me. So, I mean, he's a prime example of what I'm saying. And I'm talking about the period before the 60s. Michael Jackson showed me and all of America that need to be colorless had not gone away. Because and he had the money to do it. He went through a skin lightening of his whole body. You see? He went through changes in his nose. And when you look at
And he's probably
Michael
the biggest artist,
before
really
before
probably
he made those changes, he was good looking. Michael, the Jacksons are just a good looking family. But clearly, like you had talked about earlier, clearly he could not possibly have felt comfortable with his looks to go to the extreme to bleach out his color.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people now can look at Dr. King, look at Michael Jackson and stand in judgment, but I really don't think that people really place themselves truly in the space of what it was to exist in that moment or in that position. Because when you think about the position that he was in, Michael Jackson, people can't even imagine what it would be like to have that degree of exposure, to be that young, to be a child. And then on top of that, you're dealing with the pressures of the music industry, which people still to this day do not know the ins and outs and what it's like to exist in the music industry, especially in that moment. But that being said, I think that it is significant to think about how the media and how a lot of other things have come to program us and condition
Yeah,
us to move away from liberation. And they're constantly, and they will continue to do that because they're not controlled by us. And we're talking about a full on apparatus. I think that um, Kwame Ture would always say the capitalist media press, like really being able to like identify what it is and what the interests are behind the media and the things that we watch, because
mm-hmm.
we can't continue to operate in ignorance. And I know that we use the word ignorance very loosely a lot, and I think I want to emphasize the word ignore at the root of
Mm-hmm.
ignorance. We want to
Okay.
ignore the reality of the ramifications of the entertainment that we watch and what it's doing to us.
Right.
We constantly want to just minimize things because we don't want to take the responsibility to change them. We want to
That's right.
continue to be entertained, to be distracted, because honestly, we're afraid. And I think with the Black Panther Party, we were looking at the most beautiful expression of Black courage and specifically Black manhood that
Mm-hmm.
we had not seen up until that point. I mean, we
That's
had
right.
Malcolm, but this was an outgrowth of Malcolm. And I remember you
Mm-hmm.
speaking about how the Panthers were called the children of Malcolm.
That's right.
And I think that that's really significant because when we look at the imagery that we saw, like the guns, just the audacity, you look at that to this day and you're like, yo, like that shit right there, that was courage.
Yes,
And
it
especially
was.
that moment because things were a lot worse than they are now. Even with all the legalities and all the things, you don't see brothers getting up to tie their shoe in front of the state house out of fear of being at the wrong place and getting arrested. It's a whole different moment. So I think
Yes, it is.
the fear that has been induced, and I mean, obviously we've gone through a lot, but even at that moment, when you look at Huey and Bobby and organizing the Panthers and the reality that they were experiencing, that's after the assassination of Malcolm. That's after the assassination of Dr. King. That's after so many people had been herded into prison, many of which are still in there. So there was still more precedent. There was still a lot of fear there. But what people don't remember is that courage is an act in the face of fear. There has to be fear there in order for there to be courage, because you have to move through that fear. You have to do it in spite of that fear. And right now, I just feel that we've been so neutralized in terms of our ability to actually actively assert ourselves, that we don't have that same expression right now, like especially when it comes to black manhood and what we're dealing with right now. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it in one of our episodes, but we really have to see how things have shifted and changed. But I think one of the key things that I like to put into perspective is going back to that revolutionary paradigm and getting out of this Eurocentric idea of how things are supposed to grow and evolve, and think about how things actually revolve in nature through cycles. So I express that we're in a full moon. Nature has a beautiful cycle with the revolution of the moon as well, which models in a microcosm that revolution that we have around the sun. So when we have that new moon and it waxes into the full moon and then it wanes back into a new moon, that's a cycle that constantly goes back around. So I've seen the Black Panther Party as a peak in that cycle. It was a full moon, right? It was a climax point, full illumination. It was a full assertion of here's who we are, and we're not taking this shit no more. And we're ready for it. And the intellect, I think that part is what was the most impressive. The genius of it was the fact that they were educated and they were intelligent and they were courageous. So they didn't just move in an act of, you know, passion and fervor. There was a lot of thought, a lot of logic, a lot of evaluating and analyzing that went into what we saw expressed, right? And I think that that was crystallized in the 10-point platform that the Panthers created. So I wanted to also allow for that, for you to express that, because I think where we are in the cycle right now, because we're in a low point, right? We were at that climax and then we went back down. We're in a real low point. We're in a valley right now. And I think I always like to frame our problems as opportunities. We have to
Good.
see the situation that we're in right now and see the opportunity within that, because I think there's a huge opportunity, even though there's a strong decline in black manhood and that expression of courage in that capacity that we've seen. There's an opportunity to have more female leadership and to have more balance within our movement. And I think that's what we're expressing now. I think that what we have going on with the Amos Wilson Collective is a beautiful expression of that, because Brother Omawali and myself having that balance of both masculine and feminine energy coming in to the work, it allows each of us to operate within that sense, as opposed to, for example, me having to operate in a predominantly masculine state. I'm not able to fully bring what I can bring intuitively, what I can bring when I'm just in my center and in my feminine seat. Yes, we all have masculine and feminine in us, but there is a key to our biology. We do have to look at that reality, and that's a big thing that's being like completely reworked right now. So when we look at even Huey P. Newton's definition of power, we're not we're people are so disempowered right now. I'm trying to not use that we so loosely now, because I notice that I love my people. I love people. And I constantly connect myself in that way when I say that we. But sometimes when I say that, it's giving off the impression that we I'm including myself in it, and I'm not necessarily operating in that way. So I'll say people are in a state of disempowerment right now. Many people are. Why? Because we can't even identify what power is. And I think Huey's definition was key. Power is the ability to define phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. So who's in the state of power? Who's in the state of power? The people who are defining reality for us. And then they're shifting our reality by that definition that people are acquiescing to. So no, we have to be able to root ourselves in something. We have to root ourselves. We have to. There's a strong. There's a need for discernment right now. We really have to strengthen our ability to have good judgment and to really be able to think in order to define for ourselves so that we can operate from a state of power. So as I was saying, our biology, our physical reality, our bodies are an expression of what our dominant energy would be naturally. So as a woman, my womb state is going to naturally put me in a state of operating at my highest frequency when I'm operating more receptively because the feminine energy is receptive. So we're literally looking at the science of the push and the pull, right? The positive and the negative polarity in magnetism. It's in everything in nature. So if we can't just go back to the fundamentals of nature and science as our root and our foundation, we're going to have a real serious problem. And we already do. So what's the opportunity within that? Is we have to embody and we have to be that expression. The same way that Huey and Bobby had to embody and be the expression of what was necessary for that moment. How do we build upon that? And as I said, the 10-point platform is, I think, foundational to the entire movement because why did we even need a political party? You know, we needed order, we needed aim, we needed that definition, we needed something to a guiding post, a lighthouse, essentially. Where are we going? What do we want? How do we define that for ourselves? So we got that clarity from the 10-point platform. And that's actually what inspired Tehuti Ma'at's 11 pillar platform. So can you share a bit about the 10-point platform? Because I know that you said there's an original version of it. And what,
Yeah, and yeah. I want before I actually read out the 10-point platform, I do want to say this. I hope it is good. In the 70s, Henry Kissinger and other white demonic politicians, and you can find this online. I forgot what the document is actually called, but it's HR something, where and it was classified for many years. And when they declassified it, many of us read it. Bottom line, they want to reduce the population on Earth. Now, these are white people that wrote this.
yes, we're
Now,
going to have to mention what
who,
that is so we can put it in the show notes.
say that again?
I want us
Say
to
that again.
find what that bill is so we can put
Oh,
it in the
yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, I think I started off this evening saying that we are at war. Well, we are at war. And as time goes by, they make additions to how they are killing us. Okay, I won't talk necessarily about, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. I'm not going to do that just now. But I just want to make sure that everybody listening understands that this country has been at war with Black people and other peoples that they do not like. All you have to do is think of Native American. I say no more. So in October, between October 15th and October 16th, Bobby and Huey, they got to, 1966, they got together at Bobby Seale's job. Bobby had a job. He was a counselor for young people in North Oakland, I believe. And he and Huey, now you saw the picture with him and his gun and all that. They wanted to do something directly that affected police brutality, and also in their genius, as Neff just talked about, they knew, well, we need to not just stop police brutality. That's key, but our people need so much more. Now, what I noticed over the years, I've gone to different websites, and I noticed that writers have kind of tweaked, if you will, the original 10-point platform and program that Bobby and Huey wrote out. So I have it in my book.
What do
It's
you
10 points. I shouldn't read all 10. Should I? Maybe a couple. What do you want?
um yeah, maybe whichever ones you want to highlight, and then I'll
Okay.
talk about my own analysis in terms of the research I did and my critical thinking and analysis on seeing where the Panther Party was successful and where the Panther Party had room and opportunity for growth, like what were the weaknesses as well, so that we could create the paradigm that we created with the 11 pillar platform, inspired by it, but revolved, right?
Okay. Well, number one was we want freedom. That word was used a lot. We want the power to determine the destiny of our Black community. Our Black community. Number two, we want full employment for our people. That's really reparations. Number three, we want an end to the robbery by the white man of our Black community. Now, years later, they changed the white man to the capitalists. Okay. But in the original, it was the white man. Okay. I'm now going to jump to number 10.
That's an interesting change that they made there.
That's why I pointed it out, and it is very interesting. And that change
The
is
white,
carried more.
but that is necessary as well, because you have a lot of people who are operating, because we had talked about before one time, you and I think it was earlier, about the energy, right? And when
Yes.
we look at it as energetic, we look at it, which is the spiritual lens, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
just the word they gave us. When we're talking about this connection, this innate connection that we have, that we consider to be our spirit, right? Our emotional body, our sense, our intuition, that is energy. And there are people who operate within that energy frequency that are not white,
That
right?
is true.
It was in
And
I
that's why that change was
capitalist,
made.
black capitalist.
But I think that it also speaks to, see, when we became Black and proud, that was the focus. That was very necessary. When Elijah Muhammad said the white man is the devil, that was to stop worshiping these people, to stop looking at their aesthetics, to stop copying their culture. So the white deviltry, which I actually still use today, because there hasn't been in my lifetime, and even before my lifetime, when America hasn't been at war with somebody now.
Speaking of,
Americans are sitting back watching thousands upon thousands of Europeans, although Russians have some Asian in them, that's why they're hated too, being slaughtered. The Ukrainians. You dig? White people have been at war with somebody ever since the United States was created. My war, when I was a youngster, was the Vietnam War. And I saw the brothers come home
death
and how they
culture.
looked. And now we're in another war. But I digress.
Before
But
you continue with that, though,
go
Mama,
ahead.
I'm glad that you said that, because the energy we're talking about is that energy of death and decay,
Yeah,
right? In the ancient
yeah,
vibration, we would call that energy set. We would also call
yep.
that energy gravity, right? Because you had two sides of the
Wait,
coin.
wait, wait. You said gravity, like Gravity?
Yeah, gravity, what brings us down.
Okay.
And Heru was the opposite side of that, which was
Yes.
legacy, right? But in the
Yes.
beginning, we have this mythology that our ancestors cultivated, right? And personified. the family of the sun, right? You have Set, who's the principle of death and decay, and his wife Nebetet, principles of death and decay on the feminine and the masculine side, right? Because you had the active and receptive aspect of all energy. These weren't deities, right? These were forces of nature that we were
That's
depicting
right.
and clarifying. So on the other side, you had Set's brother Asar, and Set's
Yeah.
brother Asar was the principle of life and
Yes,
regeneration,
yes.
and his wife, his queen, his mate, Ost. I don't really want to use the word queen because that wasn't the terms we used, but his complement was Ost. And
That's
she
right.
was the feminine aspect of life and regeneration. So when we're talking about that energy, I want us to use ancestral terms because when we're talking about Set, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
gravity. It's yes, we can acknowledge the necessity for gravity, right? But gravity isn't the sole energy and force that operates on this planet, right? It's an order. It operates within its necessity for life to exist on this planet. So I only say that because what you're saying about this war mongering is speaking to the essence, right? The asili, Mama Mama Marimba Ani would say in her book Yorugu, right? An African centered critique on
Yeah.
uh, European cultural thought and behavior. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
very essential because we have to have our own power of definition. So when she uses the term asili as the cultural seed, right? The cultural seed of the European is death. So war, right? Create more death, create more
Yes.
decay.
They're
So
vampires.
yes. And on that note though, I want to shout out our brother Omawale for being here with us. Welcome, bro. Good to see you. And we had a brother Wale say, "War is at us. If we were at war, we would be strategizing and planning, etc." Well, some of us
Some
are
of us are.
strategizing and planning.
Some of us are.
Yes. So, nonetheless, the war is upon us. Yes. And it's an onslaught, right? Whether we're talking about there's no gender, you mentioned pedophilia earlier. People are not seeing how these things are connected. And I think that that's the problem is the narrative is controlled. So we have to use our voices. We have to be more present. That's honestly
That's
the
right.
only reason why I'm feeling more charged and activated to use my voice because it's getting crazy out here, honestly. And we have to have a counter current to the mainstream because the mainstream is toxic. It's
And the
poison.
mainstream is lying to you. You have to find alternative media because they are straight out lying to the American public.
Yes.
And you know
So
what else I want to say? Um,
mhm.
good sister Neff, when you mentioned Seth and Asar, I've been thinking about them for quite some time. And it seems as if because they incorporated that into their spirituality, their mythology, whatever, it seems then, and Seth is always present. That really got me when I first made that connection, that Seth is always present, which then, this is what I interpret that into. We will always have challenges and obstacles to overcome. They will always be there. It will never be like a steady kind of good thing while we're on this planet. Okay? Because we were sent here. We might have even made a deal with whoever sent us here to come at this particular. I don't know that
Oh,
for sure, but
do
there are
y'all
some
miss
spiritual
that
traditions that say
part?
that. You know what I'm saying? So clearly, we are here to overcome what is negative, just like Hebrew did for his father, what is negative on this earth.
I think there might be some people who are not familiar with the mythology, so I would like to speak on that,
Please.
especially because what it illustrates is one, we're talking about our prophecies, we're talking about our sacred texts, right? Not the sacred texts that have
Yes.
been given to us, that we've been indoctrinated into. Dr. Yosef Ben Yaakov did a great work called The
Yes, he
African
did.
of the Major Western Religions.
Hmm.
The Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, ASCAC, done a lot of great work. We had a lot of warrior
Hmm.
scholars, sacrificed a lot, who did a lot of work, who went through
That's
all the
right.
institutions and the Ivy Leagues and all the things and went to war with the academic institutions so that we can have that. We got that. We're clear. we Now, unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about that legacy, but this is we have a lot there. We have a lot of work that has already been done. So now we
That's
have
right.
to wield that. So we have a lot of sacred texts, right? We have a lot of ancient literature that we can turn to. We can directly find the origins of all of the major Western religions in Kemet specifically, right? What people know as ancient Egypt in modern day Egypt is the tip of the iceberg, right? We're talking about at the core of Africa, coming out of the Happy Valley, as I mentioned earlier, that entire flow, the only river that flows from south to north, so that we could know that those people came from the interior of Africa. They didn't come from Europe. That would be counterintuitive, wouldn't it? To how are you going to go against the current of the river?
Right. That's
Right?
right.
So there's just basic logic that we have to begin to apply with all of the different things that we're being given, because the war right now has revolved, or should I say evolved? It's evolved. So it looks different. They're going to tell you we have to reduce the carbon footprint. They're not going to tell you we want to reduce the population and kill black people. But
That's
if you
right.
know the biochemistry of what you call melanin, a term that has been given to you, and you reduce it down to simple terms, you'll know that what we're actually talking about is carbon, because that is the blackness. Literally, the base of the word kemet for
Yes.
that land
Yeah.
is kun,
Yeah.
which is literally depicted as charcoal, right? Carbon. Now, that is the essence of our liberation. How do we define ourselves? How do we identify ourselves in a way that honors our blackness, our Africanness, our humanity, our cosmic reality? And I think that the carbon compound is something we have to really deeply look into, because it allows us to address our enemy directly. Because this whole reduce the carbon footprint, like I said, when we go back into logic, I'm a farmer, but I'm pretty sure everyone has learned at some point in their life about photosynthesis and the fact that our carbon dioxide is fuel for the plants in order for them to produce the oxygen that is fuel for us.
Hmm.
So how could, and they try to reduce it, they just say carbon, you got carbon monoxide, you got all kinds of things, but they're talking about carbon dioxide. If you pump carbon dioxide into a greenhouse, you're gonna have more lush, more green. The
Wow.
problem is we're not farming. We've moved away from our legacy. We've moved away from our
Right.
roots. So when we're talking
Right.
about the land of Kemet, when we're talking about our golden age,
Right. Right. Right.
we're talking about a people who are connected to land, connected to nature, connected to the earth, Geb, as we called it. So now we've been so disconnected from that that we can't even process for ourselves, and we're just swallowing everything hook, line, and sinker. And we,
Yes.
okay, carbon, okay, there's no gender. It's like we have to be able to root ourselves in nature. We absolutely have to root ourselves in nature, because
Yes.
the order that we have to restore, because we're in a degenerate cycle. So, like I said, that was our golden age. So that was the top. That was the climax of that point, right? If we're zooming out more, we talked about the Panther Party being a climax point of the Black Liberation Movement. But when we
Yes.
talk about
Yeah.
African humanity, a climax point was Kemet. Climax point was when we had our peak golden age. And we were creating these prophecies. So when we look at those sacred texts, like, yes, that we're talking about revolution, we have to go there. We have to revolve our thinking, and we have to see ourselves moving through cycles of time. We have to pull
Yes.
and bring forward, right? Sankofa. We have to use modern, contemporary African thought and symbolism, because that Sankofa, it's an eternal concept, and that's the essence of our art and our creativity. It is eternal. That's why all the revolutionaries were artists. You have to you have to use your imagination to see something
That's
beyond.
right. You do. That is absolutely correct. Artists and visionaries. Yes, ma'am.
Right? And some people don't know about this, the story of Asar and Ast and Set. So in the mythology, this prophecy, which may sound familiar to a lot of people, whether it's Star Wars or The Lion King or Jesus in the Bible, right? You had Asar and his brother Set. They had two different parts of the kingdom. Ra gave Asar the fertile land and Set the desert land, right? Because he's the principle of death and decay, and you have the principle of life and regeneration. So you got the fertile land. Now, his brother was jealous, kills him, chops his body up into 14 pieces, scatters it. His wife, and this is the condensed version, just so we can get to the point of the prophecy. His wife and sister, Nebutet, who was also Set's wife, helped find the pieces of his body, put them back together, remember them, put those pieces back together, and the only piece they could not find was his phallus, his henenun, as we would call it, his manhood, right? His manhood was missing because it was swallowed by a fish in the hati, in the mouth. So she had to fashion, his wife had to fashion it and make a henenun out of stone or wood or clay, different interpretations of the story that's gone through so many, you know, even just the 3 millennia of active dynastic rule in Kemet. You had different interpretations of the story. Now, does the ritual, a spirit ascends over his body, he resurrects, he is impregnated, right? The first depiction of that immaculate conception, what they then brought us through Christianity as a virgin birth. He had that immaculate conception because they had not consecrated their marriage. That's why she was so sorrowful when he transitioned. So she's impregnated and she gives birth to their son Heru. And Heru
The
goes to
hero.
battle. When he's old enough, he goes to war and battles against his uncle to take his rightful place at the throne. But during that time where Set was ruling, right, the whole land turned into desert,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that expression, that prophecy is really showing a microcosm of what we're experiencing and a macrocosm. That is the fall of Africa, right? You have Set, which is embodied really and crystallized in humanity through the European, right? Through the ice, right? And that experience of human going through the ice and how that cultivated a specific culture and nature that is inherently cold, right? And the obvious polarity between that and the tropical abundance and how that created a particular culture. So we have these two polarities of humanity, and you have one that has now dominated the other, has literally cut it into pieces because those 13 pieces of Asar's body that they put back together were literally where they sat at the Berlin Conference and carved Africa up into 13 colonies. Those pieces coming back together, the unification of Africa. So, what is the phallus, the henenum, the manhood, the diaspora, right? Because what happens when you have that erection? Where does the sperm, the seed of Africa have spread now all across the planet? So you have a unification of the diaspora, of the children of Africa, who have to come together in order for Africa to have our collective spirit, our collective African spirit, to have the resurrection. That's what we're a part of. That's what every wave of revolution has been for and about. That's the continuum that we're in, because we knew we would be here, because we operated in eternity. We operate, we're talking about the essence of the cosmos. We're talking about the first living being to come upon the earth and exist. That is the legacy. So we're talking about people who have existed through so many golden ages and so many expressions and cycles of time, to know things are up right now, but they're gonna go down and they're gonna come back around. And that's how we always move and flow through eternity. So we knew things would come down and we would come to this moment right here, right now. And we have to know that we're also gonna rise and go back to that moment of glory. And when we revolve, that spiral expands. So we always get further than where we were. So the movement now is going to go further than what the Panthers did. Just like the Panthers went further than what Malcolm and the civil rights movement was, where that was. So when you were reading the 10-point platform, um, one of the things that I paid attention to really closely was, I'm a student of vibration, because that's the foundation of our existence. Everything is vibration. Our literal physical material reality is an expression of vibration. The colors that we see are an expression of vibration, literally. The frequency that our eyes, our central nervous system, is able to process through our eyes for us to see things the way that we see them is all based on the frequency of the vibration of the thing, right? Of the matter. So it's the foundation of everything. So our words have power. And when I read the 10-point platform, I read them as demands. So I wanted to revolve it into an expression that would be more empowered, where we would declare a reality as if it is here now, right? So, for example, we could say we want healing or we demand healing, right? Or we can say we know that healing, our
That's
relationship
right.
to natural spirit and divinity within each of us, is of foundational importance. So that's one of our pillars, right? Nature is the key to spiritual freedom. We are returning to our original systems and using original nature as a model and standard and connecting point. Ma'at, universal truth, cosmic harmony, balance, justice, reciprocity, is the intention and guide of our lives. We honor wholeness and complementary energy, right? So the 11 pillar platform is building upon the 10-point platform, seeing the future, right, in eternity, bringing it now, and declaring it with our words. So we're not asking anyone to give us anything, because now we've moved beyond that. Because we made those demands and we've seen what happened. Just like Dr. King went out there and the dog was ripping off people's breasts and chewing on people and they were hosing people down. Okay, we saw what we got from that. We know what we're dealing with. So they took a different approach with the Panther Party. So we see what the Panthers did. We're making demands, but these people ain't gonna give us. We ain't. Who are you? Are these the people who are our authority, where we demand anything of them, or are we taking a stance of power and acknowledging our own sovereignty, which is also one of our pillars, right? So pillar 6 is sovereignty. We are self-determined. We determine our own destiny and how our energy is distributed. We have sole authority of ourselves and our collective narrative.
That sounds
So
like the number. That sounds like the first one of
yeah,
the
again,
power to determine the destiny of our Black community. That was the first
what's
one.
the original one?
That is, I'm reading from the original one. I want to read number 10, especially since you mentioned land. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is 1966. Number 10 of the 10-point platform is we want land. Now, understand this too now. These are the things that we want, but we're not asking for them. I mean, we're just putting down our desires. Huey and Bobby were putting down their desires. We want land. And when you were talking, I really thought about that because you are of the land. I mean, you grow food from the
That's the
land.
point, though.
And
We're all land.
I was like, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And as our major political objective, a United Nations supervised plebiscite to be held throughout the Black colony, in which only Black colonial subjects will be allowed to participate for the purpose of determining the will of Black people as to their national destiny. Neff, that's the piece that is left out of many of the online
Yeah,
platforms that have the so-called 10-point platform. Okay?
yeah, that is key. Now, what's interesting about that is as Tehuti Ma'at has been developing and we started doing our different programs, like for example, our Organic Food for the People program is inspired by the free breakfast program. So we looked at the free breakfast program. We're like, okay, how do we take this to the next level? How do we actually educate people about how to grow our own food? How do we grow organic food? How do we teach people how to utilize that food and eat healthy and transition their kitchens from toxins and poisons and processed food?
That's right.
So that was like the really the heart of our work, really, because revolution is based on land, right? As Malcolm said, land is the basis of all freedom, justice, and equality. So what do we need the land for? Yes, shelter, but mainly our sustenance to exist, to live. We need food. So our ability, and like I said, when we're going back to that legacy of Kemet, that legacy and that dynastic reign only existed because of agriculture that gave
That's
us
right.
civilization. The ability of our ancestors to be able to sit in one place and build up surplus nourishment,
That's
stop
right.
being hunters and gatherers, allowed us to create art, architecture, to observe the stars and create astronomy and astrology and connect it to all things and as a holistic science, connecting it with the mathematics, connecting it with everything else. Nothing was disconnected from one another the way that it's been segmented and dichotomized within the context of the Western expression of academics and the institutions are all segmented, right? That wasn't the case, right? The temple was the university in Kemet. So I think that that's a significant aspect of
It
it. That
is. It
yeah,
is. Go ahead.
but
Go ahead.
that because when you mentioned the plebiscite, I thought about the foundation of Tehuti Ma'at and how it really started with our activism, right? You mentioned some of the names. I think you mentioned Sandra Bland, maybe Trayvon Martin, but
Oh,
Trayvon
yeah.
Martin
Mm-hmm.
really moved the collective spirit in a strong way. And I remember being out on the streets and just realizing, like, okay, something else is going on here. It was quickly co opted. They moved that whole thing into the whole Black Lives Matter. I don't think it was a coincidence that it was BLM and then we have the Black Liberation Movement. So all of that it was literally co opted. Like it was a coup d'etat of the movement. And then they took a whole wave of people down this passive lane that was not militant or revolutionary. It was all about reform, is all about reform, right? So when we look at that happening, I started working with a lot of the elders, specifically December 12th movement in Brooklyn and doing street team organizing because I wanted to be out in the street, but I didn't want to go to Union Square and like, who am I talking to? Right? I want to talk to my people. And the elders in D12, they have been active since the 80s, you know, doing this organizing work on boots on the ground, like in the hood, talking to the people, doing the programs and the work. So as we were working with them, one of the big things was this plebiscite piece. And we would go to the United Nations, interestingly enough, that movement is still here. It doesn't have momentum. And now, because we also have the reparations movement also being co opted, there's a huge distraction because we have a lot of Black capitalists who want to maximize on the opportunity for
Mhm.
more capital.
Sure.
It's moving it away from the revolutionary roots because really reparations is not the aim. It's a step, right?
Towards.
Towards something else. Like no one's gonna be mad about getting reparations, but you're not aiming to get reparations. You're aiming to get freedom. You're aiming for your liberation.
Mhm.
So we have to be clear about what has happened and how do we actually get back on track in terms of revolution, in terms of
Exactly.
growth, right? So we're on the life side, we're on the living side, we're on the regenerative side to restore humanity, not on the degenerate side to destroy and create death and decay humanity. So I feel like that's the big thing that's happening right now is there's a lot of confusion. So that means we need structure, we need systems, we need order.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that that's what the Black Panther Party provided in that moment of darkness. And in this moment of darkness, the light that we are a beacon of and shining is the system. How do we now look at our ideology and not build it on European foundation? How do we
Hmm.
look at our ideology and we just take it to the root of the cosmos, of the universe, of
Yes.
nature to be our guide and our model? We're not going
That's
to
right.
take no man's ideas, right? We're going to take the divine blueprint that we have and use that to model our method for liberation. So
And
Tehuti Ma'at ideology.
let me share this with you too. I'm gonna show this picture again because I want
Hmm.
everybody to see these brothers. Bobby Seale was married. He was married. Now he was single, but Bobby was married and working. Bobby had just gotten out of the military. Bobby had a baby. Bobby went home to Artie Seal. Artie was his wife. Now I want all the women who are listening to this to really hear what I'm about to say. You done just had a baby. Okay, you married and got a dynamic husband. You know that, and both of you love Black people because she was in the struggle too. But your husband comes home. Now he's the only one working because he's taking care of his woman and his child as a man is supposed to do. And he says, "Well, baby, look, I'm going to take half of the money that I make that I normally give to you to take care of the house, and me and you and Newton, we're going to get an office because we started the Black Panther Party so that we could follow the pigs and make sure that they stop brutalizing Black people." I always wonder, I never asked Artie this, but I always wonder, she must have said, "What did you say? What?" Yeah. Now, why am I telling you this? Because Artie Seal supported her husband in something that she knew he could be killed. She did this because she had a very good sense of family. She had respect for her husband, and clearly she was a lover of Black people. And she knew the only way, this is what they thought at the time, and I still think they're correct, that you can stop these pigs from murdering our people, torturing our people, and even embarrassing our people. When the police would vamp down a neighborhood and throw a brother up against a car, his girlfriend is looking. Little kids are looking. He's chained behind his back. Okay? How much worth do you think this community then would feel for the Black man? How did the Black man feel about himself? And do understand this, to make a slave, you had to make a slave. Them Africans were fighting like heck from Africa to the Americas on board those slave ships. Okay? In fact, they would separate the men from the women because the women would be like, "Look, We got to get them fuckers. You know what I mean? They literally separated the men from the women for those reasons. They did not want them together because the women who were African would encourage the brothers. We got to do something. You see what I'm saying here? So, what the white demons did from those slave ships, they would stop at the Caribbean and Caribbean, and they would pick any man that they wanted to, and I did say man, I didn't say woman, and they would rape that man. Okay? Now understand, the man is chained ankles and hands. So what's he going to do? Bite ya? I mean, there was no getting around it. And of course, they raped the women all along. This is what they did.
The rape of the men, though, is the key to where we are right now.
They absolutely are. And when you talk about Neff, the Djed, the pillars, one of the things that we must do, now this might even sound a little bit off topic, but it's not, because it's about our growth and development. Black people always have been and always will be about family. Because of what has happened to the black male in particular, there are not enough absolutely wonderful black men for sisters today to choose from. So I want to say to the audience, and I've been saying this lately, I did a comedy show. I said it at a comedy show. I sure did. Every black man in the audience listening to the sound of my elder lips, if you have good black friends, male, then you need to think about how to hook them up with the good black sisters that you know, so that we can grow our families. You would be surprised. I even started off in this talk. I talked about a young sister that had, breakdown. She had her experience with racism. She was single. She was asking me about black men. Okay. I have women, because I'm in different groups. I have women from 20 to 50 who've never been married. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's new. Malcolm X was married. Coretta Scott King was married. I mean, all these Harriet Tubman had a couple husbands.
The assault on us, the war has revolved, and we really have to see that the same things that were targeted, we have to see where we are now with
right.
that. The attack on the family is crystal clear. Yep. I think also, like, what you express is one piece of that, but it also made me thinking back to the Panther Party. I'm sure that was also an appealing aspect of bringing people into the party, right?
You're making me laugh, because look, when I first saw those brothers, the whole aesthetic, I said, oh no, I'd never seen nothing like that in Philly. Okay, I took my first plane ride. I didn't even care. The airplane pulled up, they were still working on. I didn't even care that they were working on an airplane that I was getting ready to get on. I had to go to see these kinds of brothers, because I had never seen. Now, I had seen brothers close to that. They were normally outlaws, criminals of some kind, But a politically educated kind of brother, and talking about patrolling the black. Oh, please. I'd have married all of them if I could have. I would have. And I really shouldn't say this, but I shall. When Huey got out of jail, Lord have mercy. Now, I wasn't one of them, because I had a Panther husband, but I wanted to be. But I wasn't one of them. Them sisters got together from Oakland and San Jose and Vallejo, and they were like, look, all of us would like to have a moment with our Minister of Defense. So all of these sisters got together. Yes, they did. And they decided among themselves, well, I could take Monday. Well, I'll then take Tuesday.
There was a calendar.
Well, I would, yes. And then they were smart. They even said, "Now look, we gotta give our commander a rest now. Come on now, let's just." What I'm getting at is this: the appeal of a man coming forward with strength and love for the black community. Them
Kind of
sisters
mag.
said, "Look, hey, that's it. That hey, we will be with him." Okay. Now I know sisters and not even just sisters, but women will throw their drawers at somebody singing at a mic. They'll do that. They'll take off their bra, not nonsensical. Point Huey's courage, what we all knew Huey had sacrificed for us, was very doggone appealing to the sisters in the Black Panther Party and sisters outside the party. I'm not even talking about them, but the sisters in the party, they worked it out themselves because they wanted to have an intimate moment with our leader.
Well, I want to ask you about that a bit too, because one of the other things that was analyzed about the Panther Party as far as a weakness or opportunity for growth and strengthening is the male dominating space, right? And now there's a perception from the outside of what that looked like. There's also stories of like, you know, he was slapping a woman in a meeting and different things like that, right? So
Wait,
I
different
want
thing like what? I missed it. Different
of
thing like,
an account of Huey slapping a woman in a
oh
meeting.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
So in terms of like, right, building upon already, because the ideology of the Black Panther Party was built on Marxism, if I'm not mistaken,
It
right?
was, yeah.
Right. We had that aspect, so it was inherently misogynistic, right? But I think
I
that word, that
yeah. Go
word,
ahead.
that word is a very tricky one to use right now, especially because we're not coming from
Yes,
a feminist perspective, right? But we're talking about the reality of a male oriented and male dominated system, right? Simply. Now, when we look back ancestrally, we're talking about yes, there was male rulership, but it was balanced by feminine power because every time, and on top of that, it wasn't all that position wasn't always held by a man. The Nisubiti, what people call the pharaoh, could also have been a woman and was a woman in some cases who operated as the female king, right? And that
I
we didn't use
remember that.
king, but it was a male role and it was seen and acknowledged as a role to be held by a man because we
Right.
honored and acknowledged the power and authority of the masculine energy as an assertive energy, right? As a strong, position to hold, you put your men in that position.
Yes.
Now, the men in that position and the women in that position would always have on their crown the twins, right? The cobra and the vulture. Now, which was called Wajet and Mut, right? Those particular energies were literally depicting that the man in that position was put in that position of authority under the influence and power of his mother and his wife, right? His lady.
Yep.
So it was showing how the woman and the feminine, the womb, was governing that position, but he was in that position of authority because he's predominantly operating out of his masculine energy, which is assertive, right? But
And
that
they're
was just
stronger normally than women.
there's a physical reality to it. There's like literal nature. Like if we can't have these conversations rooted in something,
Right.
that's that's the soil we're rooted in is nature. So yes, we have to look at that reality now. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of chemicals, synthetics, and
Yes.
artificials introduced into our ecosystem that
Yep.
has completely distorted and created it's wreaking havoc on our biology, our biochemistry in particular, our hormones. So that's a very real threat that we have to address and look at.
It
But
is.
nonetheless, our original nature from a healthy paradigm where the biochemistry is operating the way that it's designed to operate, right? By the supreme architect that has created like the human design.
That's right.
That's what we're looking at. So yes, we still honored the masculine energy in a position of authority, but it was in sync with the feminine on the left and the right side. It was literally
Let me just say this about the party because I've read and I've even written about, but I'm not going to use the word misogyny. I'm not going to use that. What
what
I
word.
am going to say is this: it is no question that, especially when I joined, I mean, sisters who even talk about me, they say like, Regina joined when it was really, wasn't, it was, I had a cadre of women there. In fact, they taught me how to be a Panther, you know. We had to teach the men. I saw sisters knock the holy hell out of some of them brothers, okay? And by the way, I was one of them, all right? Okay, because they knocking on my door. I'm like, you're not coming in because I knew what this particular one wanted. Um, so what we had to do as women, and we did, we got together because we had meetings every week, and we had to talk this out. See, a
Mhm.
lot of the brothers that even joined the pen, they were from gangs. They were crude. They were bullish. And understand this too, Neff, and everybody else who's young and wonderful like Neff. In the 60s, it was free love. Don't think we weren't influenced by the hippies, because we were. Hell, I
Mhm.
went to San Francisco because they had the best marijuana, and them white hippies, they would just give it away. We like, hey, okay, fine. Hey, you want to buy some pay? Yes.
Interesting.
So we came up during the era of free love, during the era of the birth control pill, during the era of Playboy magazine. So we went from the 50s where I was wearing gloves. My mother and aunt wore gloves, little dainty. On Easter, I had my little gloves. I had my Shirley Temple curls, you know, and women, many women in the 50s did not wear, I'm talking about black, I'm talking about even poor ass black women. I shouldn't say ass. I'm even talking about the impoverished black woman. When she started having children, she stayed home.
Mhm.
She didn't go to work,
Trading in our feminine.
you know? So, okay. And yes, men beat their wives. Yes, they did. And I'm not even talking about the Panthers. I'm talking about in the black community. Like where I lived in this poor little area in South Philadelphia, we could expect at least twice a month Mr. So and so down the street was going to knock his wife down the steps and out. We going to call the cops, and the cops are going to come, or the brothers are going to get together and pull him off of her. This was a part of black culture, and certainly it was wrong. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, heck, the brothers brought that right into the Black Panther Party. But do remember, we had Kathleen Cleaver. Kathleen Cleaver was the communication secretary, you know? And she was married to Eldridge Cleaver. I mean, they had knockdown, drag out fights where Panthers would come and pull them apart. That's for real, for real, you know? Then we had to, again, educate those brothers, not all of them, because all brothers didn't act that way. All Panther men did not, but there were some. And what was worse, especially for me, and I've written about this, my captain had made a decision about me, and I was like, you must be, well, I won't go into what I absolutely said and did, but the point was, some of the brothers who were in authority, they are black men. They hadn't been in no kind of authority before. So they would sit back like they were kings, like their branch or their chapter of the Black Panther Party was like their fiefdom, if you will, you know. So he
That's
had to
on.
be reported. He had, so we, in fact, I'm not saying, and I would never say this because some sisters did have a hard time. Okay. See, I was not, I was kind of soft spoken at that, but not all the way live, soft spoken. Some good sisters came in there, they were really nice for girls. And you mixed it with these hardcore former gang bangers, and yes, there would be some problems. But and this is very important, we talked them suckers out. We had big meetings over that. Okay, it was just because we had to tame them. And Elaine Brown, she became chair of Black Panther Party. Okay, when Kathleen Cleaver, she had to go into exile with her husband. She was in Paris and in Algiers. So we had male female dynamics, but they were rooted in the ugly of Black culture and the so-called freedom of the time period, that free love period where you had the pill so you could sleep with whomever. But I want to, because I'll get back to Huey slapping the supposed prostitute. I'm gonna get back to that. I haven't forgotten that because that's important, and I want to speak on that. But I just also wanted to point out that the Black man, from historical times right up to our times, right up to now, is presented as a beast. In fact, there was a book out in the 1940s, I believe it was, called The Black Man, the Beast. All right. So I'm very sensitive to how Black men are presented. All right. I don't want to erase their wrong behavior, but I always want to put it within the context of how Black men have been written about. Do you know, in the military, white military officers, before they would allow Black men into any of the military, there were reports saying, well, the Black man is a woman. The Black man is the woman of the races. That is actually written, and that was taught in the military, the white military, from World War I into World War II, that a Black man was a lady. So what does that mean? That means I can rape you. That's what it meant. And when Black men were hung, very often, and I wrote about that in this book. Okay. When Black men were hung, oftentimes they were raped too. Now, so I'm very sensitive about how of the image of the Black man and how he is treated. Now, let me get back to Huey and the slapping of that woman. I'm not going to say that he didn't, but this is what I'm going to say. Before Huey went to jail, now understand what jail means. Huey was isolated. Huey was in the hole. Because when they let him out, Huey would, like Bobby, organize the prisoners. We ain't gotta, they paying us a penny a shoe, because they had these jobs within prisons where, it was slave labor, quite frankly. So Huey was constantly in the hole. And we couldn't even get to Huey. Lawyers couldn't even get to Huey. What happened to Huey? Now, see, I did not know Huey prior to jail. I didn't know. When he got out of jail, I heard from his friend, people, brothers that, knew Huey before he was a Panther and all like that. They said, that's not Huey. This is what they said, Neff. You know how we were talking about that energy, or you were talking about, and they said, that is not the Huey that we know. Why? Huey and Bobby weren't on drugs, but Huey damn sure started sniffing cocaine when he came out.
And we don't know what happened.
Okay. So there, I just want to add those factors into his legacy. Okay. Because they're true. And I don't want, and see, I don't call myself a feminist. That's a white girl's term. She can go, I deal with Clenora Hudson Weems, who wrote a book called, I think it's called Africana Womanism or something like that. We have to create our own terms. Because see, these white feminists, they want to go to war with their man. Fine, go. I don't care. Shit. That's on y'all. I want to love Black men, all of them. I want Black men to recognize their strength and why they are here on earth. They're supposed to protect the beauty of the Black woman. That's what they're supposed to do.
But first they
And
have
that's
to.
what they did. Hey, Asar, she put her husband back together again. This
Mhm.
is what she did. And even in death, the brother was able to impregnate her. Too much. So, yes, there were problems within the Black Panther Party. And this is most interesting. I think it was around 1973, 74, 75. It was more women in the party than men. The sisters kept coming. Hey, sisters would have their babies sleeping in the same room. I mean, there was like nurseries of Panther babies. Yes. We start now. I always say we, I wasn't part of it. Sister Erica Huggins, she started the freedom schools, the Black liberation schools. By the way, her husband, check this out, Neff.
Mhm.
Black men killed her husband because they were
What?
CIA. And then they arrested her. And well, she had just had a baby. The baby wasn't even named. She is sitting home with her newborn, and she finds out that her husband and best friend were murdered, and the pigs came and arrested her and her child. She's in the back of a police van with the baby at her breasts, knowing that that baby is never going to see his father, John Huggins. And she was on her way to jail, wondering, are they going to take my baby from me? Which, of course, they did.
Mhm.
Just like during slavery times. They took that newborn from her. They killed her husband, then put her in jail. These are the Panther stories that I write about because people don't know the sacrifices that the brothers and sisters made because we loved you all so much and knew you were coming behind us. Everything that we did that Huey and Bobby taught us was not only, this is what I learned about time, not like you know about it, Sister Neff. I mean, you just fabulous with it. But this is when I really start, and I'm young. I'm like, what the hell am I thinking about being a mother at 40 or 50? Or I didn't, please. But they always would say in our political education classes that everything we're doing is for now, but really for the next generation, for the future. The next generation, the future generations were supposed to continue our legacy. That is what they taught. Okay.
Yeah. And
Feminists are in a war with their men. The white feminists that they patriarchy. That's fine. That is y'all's history.
that's not
I'm gonna go with Neff back to ancient Kemet and see what those people did, and then I'll make my decisions. But I am not fine, and I encourage every sister out. Look, oh, he felt my ass. Well, God damn it, cover it. Do something with your ass. What are you, Nicki Minaj? I was like, people are listening. What's that other sister's name? The Stallion? Why would you call yourself a stallion? So somebody could ride your ass? Excuse me. Please,
a
please
stallion.
edit my
So
stuff
that's
out. But
what was with
when I get crazy like this, but this is I'm telling you, in the 50s, and I'm gonna bring in pictures for one of our episodes. You gotta see my mother and her sisters and how they dressed when they were going out. I mean, some of you may be shocked, especially those of you who are young. And brothers, when it was a party, now I'm not talking about teenagers, but working men, when it was a party, they went in suit and tie. I'll show you the pictures from the 40s. And they weren't Muslims. These were just, and you can just look at the styles now. So you could see the devolution of what has happened to our race. And I'm gonna shut up in a minute, but because I told this to Neff and I tell this to all young people. I want y'all to know everything that I know. Everything. And that's not to say that you're supposed to do everything, like I don't mean it that way. Don't take it that way. But I need for you to know everything that I know so that you can take it and use it, advance it for the next generation. Because one of our biggest problems and those who develop educational systems in this country knew that. They cut off the kind of education and the kind of teachers that should be in these universities. They stopped them. They arrange a curriculum that will not encourage strength in the black man and a family orientation in the black woman.
That's also why
And
you have a lot of feminism inside of the universities.
that's
Um,
exact. There's courses on that. That's right.
Huge aspect of how people, not only the coursework, I'm talking about how people are being socialized within the academic institutions. There is an
Mm-hmm.
inherent culture that creates a paradigm of division between black men and black women,
That's
or
right.
men and women in general, I'll say. But I do want, you said a lot that I wanted to touch on.
I did. Okay.
It's not our business, which is why I wanted to give the ancient context, because really our first pillar is Ma'at. So we're talking about complementarity, period. We know we need
Right.
each other. So we have to
Right.
heal that. We have to heal that. We need each other. And we need each other functioning in the way that we're designed to function,
That's right.
right? We need our men to be um, assertive and masculine, and we need our women to be receptive and feminine,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I say receptive, I'm really speaking about us being able to operate in our true power of our womb, our intuition, our intuitive intelligence. And when we are forced to operate in this very masculine state, which we've been in
Right.
the survival
Right. Right.
mode that
Right.
we've been in, we haven't been able to embrace that and receive that
Mm.
fully. A lot of us are really have a lot of self-doubt, and we don't even trust our own intuition. We don't even know how to hear that inner voice anymore. But the same goes for our men as well. They have to heal their feminine energy as well, just like we have to heal our masculine energy, because our men are very detached from their emotions, very desensitized to their emotions. And that's one of the things that we've been working through a lot within our collective, because we do a lot of co-ed healing spaces. So when we define revolution, we use the five forces of revolution are healing, liberation, restoration, elevation, and expansion, because we're building on a foundation of spiritual warriorship. So my beautiful sister Kepra Ma'at Heteru created another paradigm, right, of this intrinsic system that we're in, to illustrate a way that we move into a healed leadership paradigm, essentially, right? And the five forces of spiritual warriorship are love, light, leadership, power, and freedom, because they're universal. So what we took with Tehuti Ma'at, building on that foundation, is added the five forces of revolution, which puts it in the context of the moment we're in right now, and how do we operate in order to create that reality, because we're not able to even function within that, because we need healing. So that's why we started with
Yes,
healing.
we do. Yes, we
Healing,
do.
liberation, restoration, elevation, and expansion. And it's interesting because Baba Heru, my spiritual father, was one, and I actually met my sister Kepra when she was getting her ankh to become a priestess, which she reminded me was actually on the spring equinox. But I met her at Baba Heru's at the Shrine of Ptah, and she Baba Heru is also the first person who told me about interpreting Asar's and Aust's prophecy as looking at the African story and connecting that to the 13 colonies and the Berlin Conference and all of that.
Okay.
So, but I say that because when I think of what Kefra Ma'at um, gave to me personally in my healing journey, which is what this is an expression and outgrowth of, right? Just like we have Huey and Bobby, but also it's an expression and outgrowth of the partnership that I had with my king at the time, right? My partner at the time, he and I were working together to create this. We literally created and called it Tehuti Ma'at because of our astrological signs. Mine's being Tehuti, Gemini, his being Ma'at, Libra. So it was showing that complementarity of those two forces, because in the ancient sacred science, every single energy has a complement. It had a masculine and a feminine.
Yes.
It was always
Yes.
a couple. and things were always depicted as families. It wasn't just Ast, and Heru as the original Trinity. You also had the Trinity preceding that, which was Mut,
Mm-hmm.
Khnum, and Khonshu, right? So these were three other energies in principle. So this is something that we have to take into consideration because we've been taught, it's been given to us from someone else's interpretation, and they can't even
That's right.
grasp
That's right.
the depth of the symbolism that our ancestors had. So they just told us they were gods and goddesses, that they were deities, and that's not what it is at all. These are not energies that you're supposed to be looking to or worshiping or seeing outside of yourself. It's
Right.
energies that are inherent in the universe that we embody, that are within us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that that's very, very important. But when you were speaking about the feminism and all that, like we have to root ourselves back to our roots, back to our original nature, because we're talking about when we're talking about that expression. I'm glad you gave the context to why the brothers were functioning that way, because also when we look at that behavior of beating the women, right? We're talking about coming out of enslavement. You know, we're talking about that rape and that degree of exploitation that we cannot even imagine
That's right.
that being the order of the day, not something you can complain about, not something like that was just life being emasculated in that way in front of your children, in front of your wife, right? That was the order of the day. That was normal, right? I'll say it was never normal. It was regular because it was happening regularly, but it
That
was
is very
absolutely not.
true.
So that was what created that paradigm, and that is what still is creating the unhealthy paradigms that we have of how our men and our women are both operating. So that unity and that healing has to happen.
It does.
So that's one of the things that we focus on a lot. And I'm so glad that you gave that context because the work that we're doing is really to embody and show how do we create that ma'at, how do we create that balance, how do we
Yeah.
honor both the male and the female, how do we do and have space for the healing that each of us needs to do, and how do we come together to do that? Because one of the key programs that we have that we do every month is a healing cipher called Intuit, right? And we use Intuit as an action word because it's about activating our intuition. It's ritual therapy. It's us going back to creating our own ways of healing, not thinking of the ways we've been, because the mental health narrative, like the clinical narrative, is built on a different foundation, right? Even when you think about what, ask yourself, were there any African people of African descent, Black people at in Puerto Rico when they made that diagnostic and statistical manual that psychiatry is based upon?
Mm-hmm.
No, they were not. So we have to really look at the fact that our culture is not honored in these institutions and within um, these paradigms that they've created. So we have to create our own.
Yes, we
So
do. Yes.
ritual therapy is beautiful because it actually started as first a sacred womb cipher, which was for women. We were doing womb circles. And then quickly realizing as we're doing that healing work as women, a lot of our pain is associated with men. And a
Yes, it
lot of the
is.
trauma that we're carrying in our womb is there. And then eventually
Yes.
we started having brothers come in at a certain time, opening the space for brothers because we also want to honor the sisters who aren't ready for that. We have a lot of people who've moved through a lot of trauma, a lot of people who were raped by their fathers, a lot of people
That's
who have
right.
gone through
That's
a
right.
lot of different
Mm-hmm.
experiences that, we have to honor everyone being on their own individual journey as well.
Mm-hmm.
So within that, we're creating not only leadership support systems, because like I said, we're built on that foundation of spiritual warriorship. So we're talking about healing our relationship to leadership, to power, to authority, like you were talking about. Because when you have people who have been that um, dominated and
And
literally by
abused.
we're
Mm-hmm.
not existing in that paradigm anymore, right? It's not enforced on us anymore. It's more coercive,
That's right.
right? It's not direct. But at that point, when you're talking about being chained and raped, that's by force.
Yep.
That's a different reality, right? So you're talking about people who coming from that have that trauma still in our blood, right? We are all the science now to show how that trauma is carried and sustained passing through our blood. So we have to be ancestral healing. We have to be generational healing. We have to be
Yes, we
healing
do.
of the trauma that
Yes,
we've
we do.
experienced. So our coming into positions of power from that vantage point, yes, it's going to be unhealthy expressions of that power. So we're focused on doing a lot of that leadership development, a lot of that healing work, right?
Yes.
What is called the self-initiation mission, which is
Mm-hmm.
the paradigm of spiritual warriorship, where you go into yourself to do your own healing process and be accountable within that with
Mm-hmm.
community. We need all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually it turned into the Intuit ciphers, which are co-ed. So we have both men and women present. Interestingly enough, since we've been doing it, especially as we collaborated with the African War College to create the Amos Wilson Collective, we've had a lot more brothers. This was my first time. Like I used to have, like there were at some point at the Tehuti Ma'at Garden, we did have like 50 women at this fire. Since they went virtual and we've been holding these spaces, at some point there will be some cycles where there will be more men than there were women. And I
Very
was so
good.
thankful for that because it showed a complete shift in what has happened because women have had a lot of space for healing. Now we got a lot more to go, a lot more to do, but we've done enough now where I feel like we can give our brothers the space to do their healing. And that's what I'm actually witnessing and seeing,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is happening. And I think we have to do both simultaneously. We have to lift the positive, the healing, the what is actually happening. We have to also look at and examine the negative and what is also happening that is unsavory because we can't just be in one space where it's like, no, we don't want to acknowledge that because we want to focus on this like what can become toxic positivity even where it's like we're not dealing with reality now because we only want to see the positive. Like we have to really be able to operate in our holistic worldview, right? That African worldview is both and. It's not either or. It's not
That's
separate.
right.
It's bringing together. So if what we need is unity, we have to bring together both and.
That's right.
That we can start framing our point of view on all things. And the philosophy of Tehuti Ma'at, the ideology of Tehuti Ma'at, is bringing together the essence of these cosmic forces, right? Tehuti, the intelligence and wisdom, right? Cosmic order, mathematics, all of that,
All of
communication,
that.
connection. And the feminine complement to that, Ma'at, being truth, reciprocity, sobriety, propriety, morality, balance, symmetry, wholeness, right? How they come together and how we function within that holistic symmetry. That's what
Exactly.
spiritual
Exactly.
ideology
Exactly.
from both sides.
Okay. I just want to, one of the reasons, and I want people to know this, that I'm even here with this good sister, because I don't waste time. I know that I have less time to look forward to than, I once had. I'm 73. You dig? So I think about not being here regularly. All right. And that's cool. I don't freak out. I mean, hell, if I was ready to go up against the police, I kind of neutralize fear. Okay. So I'm cool. I'm cool with that. But when I first heard Neff speak, okay, probably on Omar Wale's show, I was like, well, I was just astounded. I was amazed. And let me tell you why. And I don't know if I even told you this, Neff. Before I even knew this good sister, I knew some. She knows much more than me in this area of comedic science and healing and all this. She knows much more. But I knew enough, all right, because Huey and Bobby started Black Studies. People don't know that, but they did at Merritt College,
Mm-hmm.
1964. It didn't start at San Francisco State, 1968. As many of the books say, it started with Huey and Bobby, but they, whatever, cut that out. In
That's
Black Studies, say that again.
that's very important to know. I'm glad you
That
said
is
that.
that. That's yes. That's absolutely. That's why I got it in there. But anyway, okay. So I did learn. I learned about ancestors and, my early work in Black studies, learning and then teaching. I got an ailment. I'm not going to name what it was. It's one of the top one. This I was. What was I? I think I was in my 40s. It was one of the top five or three diseases that take people off the planet. Even now, I had it. I'll never forget it when I got the diagnosis. I went right to the bar and I sat up at the bar. I normally don't sit at the bar, but I sat at the bar and I ordered a strong drink. And I sat at the bar and I said, "All right, Regina, what you going to do?" Because, of course, Western science said you got to get an operation. You must get an operation. Right now, get the. So, and I thought about it. I said, I'm not in pain. I'm not, I just analyzed myself. And I said, you know what? I am not getting they ain't cut. I ain't going under the knife. I'm not going. So I decided, I said, all right, I'm not gonna tell people that I might have told one per I'm not gonna tell people because people will what? They'll scare you. And I knew that the energy of being scared, you can't think. You make irrational decisions. I could not be scared. I knew I needed to be calm.
Oh, so that's what's happening.
That's the purpose of meditation, which I didn't even know then. All right. But I'm like, okay, we're going to be calm. Then I read every book I could find on people who had healed themselves. I read all kinds of stuff from white doctors, black doctors, African. Okay. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to change our diet. That was hard too, because I like a couple of drinks over the weekend. I still do. But I knew, I said, okay, to get what I had, I thought about the relationship between what you intake in your body and what it does to your body. So I
Mhm.
knew, I said, okay, it's got to be absolutely organic. It's got to be it got to be vegetables. In other words, I changed my entire, and Lord, was it hard? Do you know how much I love a hot sausage? I changed my entire diet. I called on the universe daily. It was in my 40s when I started to meditate night and day. And I was meditating on what I needed to get out of my body. Within, I guess it was 8 months to a year, I was healthy Regina. Okay? And people had told me in my 40s, now look, if you don't get an operation, you know you could die. You know you could. Well, I'm 73. How do you like that? So I've known since then, and I've healed myself from a couple of things. Yes, I have.
Okay.
That's why I know what this sister got for you all is pure and good. It is good for us. Okay? Because she's talking about things in more depth than I ever can. But this is what I absolutely know the body can heal. You have some faith, you deal with this universe like you're supposed to, the body can heal. You
Yeah,
decide, well, even though I like this,
can
I,
heal.
I, I got to give it up. Give it up. You become a new person. So I just wanted to say that because I thought it and think that it's important that people who are watching this understand what it is that you offer. Because I took her course. I'm still stunned with what she has to be so young. Okay,
Well,
so
we have
well, absolutely, you know. But yeah,
yeah, I appreciate that very much, Mama Regina. Um, one, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, Navigating Eternity is one of the courses that we have. I'll actually put our link tree in the description. Um, but also, I think that, this is an ongoing conversation. So, I want people to know that because I also have to wrap up. I got to get up early and start sowing that land again. I've kind of been exhausted from the day of sowing in general. I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but That full moon got me going because I needed that energy. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity that we've had. Now, Mama Regina and I are going to be here every Tuesday, and we're going to be live. And our goal is just to share and have these conversations. We're going to actually go through the 11 pillar platform. So that way, you'll also get a sense of how we're continuing that legacy of the Black Panther Party through the work that we're doing. And then through that, you'll be able to be introduced to all of the different aspects of our work, whether that be organic food for the people or just all the ways that we're addressing and activating these pillars, right? And a lot of the work and a lot of the medicine that we've cultivated and that we offer, we disseminate and distribute through Tehuti Ma'at are available to you. We have Tehuti Ma'at Academy. We have our membership program, which I'll just put on there. But I highly encourage people to get more familiar with Tehuti Ma'at first, obviously, which you could go to our About page because we're really rooted in the community service work. But the essence of what we're doing is we're building cooperatives, right? Because we have to create these revolutionary institutions. So if you're someone who just wants to support the work, then there's an aspect that you can join on. If you're just on your healing journey and you want that support and you want access to our network, and you can come into the ARC, which is the Amos Wilson Collective that I mentioned. So that's our private server. So you can get access to our community chat rooms and also our exclusive gatherings, right? Like I said, the Intuit Healing Ciphers. Now, with the Empire rank, which is our second rank, that will give you access to Tehuti Ma'at Academy. So you'll be able to get access to our different classes and courses, as well as our archives and exclusive content. And then the Galaxy rank is for people who are mainly like leaders, really, people who are entrepreneurs, even who want to have that degree of accountability, and you can actually come in through Navigating Eternity, which is the course that Mama Regina mentioned, and our accountability community, where we integrate people in to be able to contribute to our various cooperatives. So if you actually want to be able to facilitate workshops, or if you want to be a vendor on our shop, or um, any of the different things that we have going on, right? If you want to contribute, be a part of the things that we're doing, then that would be the rank for you. But in the meantime, we'll be back here every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. We're also on Instagram, Mama Regina. I don't know if you, I think you said you might have started Instagram. I don't know, but I don't know your
I'm
Instagram.
not really on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not,
Okay, no social media. Good for you.
but I got a website. I got a website.
And follow.
www.apanthersister.com.
Yes, and I'm gonna put that in our description as well. But it was down here as well, so you can support Mama Regina. She has several books that she has written that you can actually order from her. And anything else that you want to share, Mama Regina?
No, it's been fun. It's always good to talk to you. And my love to everybody that is listening to this podcast.
Okay. All right, we'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you for joining us and travel light. All right, power. Thank you, Mama Regina.
You're welcome.